The average American retiree receives $2,071 a month. In most of the United States that does not cover rent and groceries. So here are 7 countries where that exact check still covers everything, tested at 2 different benefit levels, because the difference between $1,800 and $2,400 changes the map completely. Every country has to clear 2 bars, not 1, you have to afford it, and it has to let you stay. 3 famous destinations failed the second bar this year, and I will show you those at the end. Number 1. Panama. Residency threshold, $1,000 a month in guaranteed lifetime pension. Social Security qualifies. That is the lowest bar anywhere on this list, and it clears on a below-average benefit of $1,800 with $800 to spare. Currency volatility, 0. Panama uses the US dollar as legal tender. Your benefit does not get converted, does not lose a spread, and does not move with an exchange rate. On a fixed income, this is worth more than people appreciate, because it makes your budget knowable years in advance. Where to live on this budget? David and the surrounding Chiriquí province, or Boquete if you can absorb higher rent in exchange for a climate that eliminates your air conditioning bill. Panama City is genuinely expensive and does not work on a below-average benefit. Healthcare, strong. World-class private hospitals in Panama City, solid regional care in David, and the Pensionado program statutory discounts apply to consultations and medications. Family travel, the best on this list. Panama City is a major regional air hub with excellent connections to the United States, and flights are short. Before the other 6, let me fix the 2 numbers I am going to test every country against. Scenario A is $1,800 a month, which describes someone who claimed early or had an interrupted career. Scenario B is $2,400, which describes a solid earnings record taken at full retirement age. Every country here has to work at B. The ones that also work at A, I will say so. According to the Social Security Administration's figures for 2026, the average monthly benefit for a retired worker is $2,071, after the 2.8% cost of living adjustment that took effect in January. The maximum benefit for someone claiming at full retirement age is $4,152, and very few people get anywhere near it. Your benefit is your benefit. It depends on your earnings history, on the age you claimed, and on decades of specifics that no video can guess. So we are going to run 2 scenarios and you can find yourself between them. Scenario A is $1,800 a month. That is somewhat below average, and it describes a lot of people, particularly those who claimed early at 62 or who had interrupted careers. Scenario B is $2,400 a month. That is somewhat above average, and it describes someone with a solid earnings record who waited until at least full retirement age. Every country in this video has to work at Scenario B. The ones that also work at Scenario A get called out specifically, because that difference of $600 a month changes the map more than people expect. Before the countries, the mechanics, because there is a lot of confusion about whether you can even receive Social Security abroad. If you are a United States citizen, you can generally receive your Social Security retirement benefits while living in almost any foreign country. The exceptions are Cuba and North Korea, where Treasury regulations prohibit sending payments. If you are a U.S. citizen living in one of those 2, the payments are withheld rather than forfeited, and you can receive the withheld amounts once you move somewhere payments can be sent. If you are not a U.S. citizen, the rules are considerably more restrictive. Generally, benefits stop after the 6th calendar month outside the United States, though there is a long list of exceptions based on citizenship, country of residence, and the specifics of your work record. If that describes you, do not rely on a general summary. The Social Security Administration publishes a screening tool for payments abroad, and you should use it for your own case. A few practical mechanics that matter more than people expect. You can usually have your benefit deposited directly into a bank account in your country of residence, through international direct deposit, in many countries. Alternatively, you can keep an American bank account and have it deposited there, which is what a great many retirees abroad actually do, then transfer money as needed. Keeping the American account is generally the more flexible option, and it keeps your American financial identity intact, which matters for credit, taxes, and the possibility of returning. You are required to report to Social Security if you move abroad, and beneficiaries outside the United States periodically receive a questionnaire that must be returned. Ignoring it can suspend your payments. This sounds trivial, and it strands people every year, usually because the form went to an old address. And one thing I have to say clearly, because it is the single most common misunderstanding: your Social Security follows you, but your Medicare does not. Medicare generally does not cover care outside the United States. Receiving your benefit in Ecuador does not mean receiving your healthcare in Ecuador. Those are entirely separate systems, and we have a full video on that gap. Now the countries. 7 of them, and I want to flag something about how this list was built. I started with a list that included Mexico, Greece, and Malaysia, because those are the countries people ask about. All 3 came off the list, and not because of cost. Mexico raised its temporary residency income threshold to a reported $4,400 a month as of January 2026, which is above the maximum possible Social Security benefit. Greece requires about €3,500 a month, roughly $4,050. Malaysia's restructured program requires substantial fixed deposits and a mandatory property purchase held for 10 years. None of those are affordability problems. They are admission problems. A Social Security retiree cannot legally settle in any of the 3 on benefit income alone in 2026. So here are 7 that actually work. Number 2. Ecuador. Residency threshold, $1,446 a month for 2026, being 3 times the national basic salary of $482. Works at Scenario B comfortably. At Scenario A, $1,800, it still clears, but with less headroom than you might want. Currency volatility, 0 again. Ecuador is dollarized. Where to live? Cuenca is the obvious answer, and it is a genuinely excellent one, with the year-round spring climate that removes both heating and cooling from your budget. Loya and Vilcabamba are cheaper. Quito and Guayaquil are more expensive and, in Guayaquil's case, carry security considerations you should research carefully. Healthcare, decent. Legal residents can join the public system through the Social Security Institute for a monthly contribution, and there is an affordable private sector. Complex cases mean traveling to Quito or Guayaquil. The altitude question is real. Cuenca sits at around 2,500 meters, and that is a genuine medical consideration for anyone with cardiac or pulmonary conditions. Talk to your doctor before you commit, not after you have shipped your furniture. Number 3. Colombia. Residency threshold, 3 times the Colombian monthly minimum wage, roughly 5,252,000 pesos a month for 2026, which lands somewhere around $1,300 to $1,400 depending on the exchange rate. Works at both scenarios. And here is where currency volatility finally enters the picture, because Colombia is not dollarized. This cuts both ways, and I want to be even-handed about it. A weak peso, which is what dollar earners have enjoyed for years, means your benefit buys more and your visa threshold in dollar terms falls. A strong peso means the opposite: your rent rises in dollar terms and your qualifying threshold rises with it. Neither is under your control. The practical implication is that in a non-dollarized country you should keep a larger reserve and you should avoid committing to fixed dollar obligations. It is the difference between a budget and a forecast. Where to live? Pereira, Manizales and Armenia in the coffee region are the value picks, with a mild climate at moderate altitude. Medellin is much better known and correspondingly more expensive, particularly in the neighborhoods foreigners cluster in. Healthcare, genuinely strong. Colombia's private prepaid health plans are excellent value and the medical system is one of the better ones in Latin America. Number 4. Albania. Residency threshold, pension income of about 1.2 million lek per year, roughly 11,600 euros, or a little under 1,000 euros a month. Works at both scenarios easily. And the reason Albania is here rather than a dozen prettier Mediterranean options is tax. Albania does not tax qualifying foreign pension income. That is a structural advantage, not a discount. But understand clearly that this does not release you from American tax obligations. The United States taxes its citizens on worldwide income regardless of residence, so you will still be filing a U.S. return, and how the two interact depends on your specific situation. Talk to a cross-border tax professional. Currency volatility, the lek is a factor, and Albania is a small economy, so treat that as a real consideration rather than a footnote. Where to live? Vlora, Durrës and the smaller coastal towns. Be aware that coastal rents can spike during the summer tourist season and that some landlords resist year-round leases at year-round prices. Tirana is more expensive. Healthcare, the weakest on this list, and this is the reason Albania is not ranked first despite the numbers. The public system is underfunded and serious conditions frequently mean traveling to Greece, Italy, or Turkey. If you manage an ongoing condition, weigh this very heavily. Number 5. Portugal. Residency threshold, the D7 requires about 920 euros a month, roughly $1,066 at current rates. Works at both scenarios. This is the only European Union option on this list that a Social Security retiree can realistically enter, and that matters, because it comes with access to the Portuguese National Health Service, one of the lowest violent crime rates in the world, and eventual mobility within Europe. But I have to be specific about where. At Scenario A, $1,800 a month, Lisbon and Porto do not work. They have become genuinely expensive and you would be pushed to the periphery, which undoes the reason you moved there. The Portugal that works on a social security budget is the interior, Castelo Branco, Guarda, Covilhã, Viseu, and the Alentejo towns. These are real places with hospitals and rail connections, and they are dramatically cheaper. I am stating that plainly because a lot of content sells Portugal on Lisbon imagery and interior prices, and those are two different countries. Currency volatility, the euro. A strengthening euro directly reduces your purchasing power, and the euro has moved meaningfully against the dollar in recent years. Budget for that. Healthcare, good, with the caveat that specialist waits in the interior are longer because there are fewer specialists. Many residents carry inexpensive private insurance alongside public access. Number 6. Thailand. Residency threshold, 800,000 baht in a Thai bank, or 65,000 baht per month in income, or a combination totaling 800,000 over the year. At recent exchange rates the monthly income route sits close to $2,000. Read that carefully against our scenarios. At scenario B, $2,400, the income route works. At scenario A, $1,800, it does not, and you would need the deposit route, which means roughly $24,000 sitting in a Thai bank account that you cannot spend. That is capital, not income, and if you do not have it, Thailand is closed to you. Health insurance is mandatory for this visa category, with minimum coverage requirements. Budget it as a fixed cost that rises with age and typically excludes pre-existing conditions. Where to live? Chiang Mai is the value answer, with excellent inexpensive private healthcare and superb cheap food. Be aware of the burning season, roughly February through April, when air quality can reach hazardous levels and many residents leave. Budget for that possibility both financially and medically. Family travel, the worst on this list along with the Philippines. Thailand is very far from the United States, flights are long and expensive, and that matters enormously when there is a family emergency. Number 7. The Philippines. Residency threshold, the special resident retiree visa for applicants 50 and over with a qualifying pension requires a $10,000 deposit alongside demonstrated pension income of at least $800 a month for a single applicant. Works at both scenarios on income, provided you have the deposit. The enormous practical advantage is English. It is an official language, used in government, medicine, and business. For an American retiree that removes a great deal of daily friction, and it is worth more than it sounds when you are reading a lease or understanding a diagnosis. Where to live? Dumaguete, Tagbilaran, Iloilo, and similar mid-sized cities. Manila is expensive and difficult. Healthcare, limited outside Manila and Cebu, and that is a genuine constraint. And budget for typhoons. This is not a remote risk, it is an annual weather pattern, and it means real costs, property damage, evacuation, power outages, and periods where you may need to leave. Treat it as a line item, not a surprise. Now, 3 budget categories that decide whether any of this actually works, and that almost nobody plans for. First, setup cost. Getting legally established somewhere is a one-time expense that lands entirely in your first year. Immigration attorney or facilitator fees, government application and residence card fees, apostilles and certified translations of your birth certificate, background check and pension verification, flights, shipping, rental deposits that in many markets mean 2 or 3 months up front, and furnishing an apartment, because unfurnished in Latin America and Southeast Asia frequently means genuinely empty. Realistically, $5,000 to $12,000 depending on the country. On a Social Security income, that money has to come from savings. If you do not have it, you are not ready yet, and that is a timing problem rather than a permanent no. Second, the emergency reserve, and this is the one I most want you to take seriously. 6 months of expenses is the conventional advice, and I think for a retiree abroad it is too low. Here is why. Your risks are correlated in a way they were not at home. A medical emergency can simultaneously produce a hospital bill, a flight to a better hospital, a family member flying out to help, and possibly an early lease termination. A currency swing can raise your rent and your visa threshold at the same time. A political disruption can affect banking and travel together. I would want 12 months of expenses, held in dollars, in an American account, accessible from abroad. Not invested in the local market. Not tied up in local property. Liquid, in your home currency, reachable on a bad day. Third, family travel. Be honest about the frequency. If you have grandchildren, you are probably not flying home once every 3 years. Price a realistic number of round trips per year from your actual destination and divide by 12, and put it in the monthly budget as a fixed line. From Panama, that is a modest number. From Thailand or the Philippines, it is a large one, and it is the single biggest hidden cost of retiring far away. There is a fourth thing that belongs in this list and rarely appears anywhere, which is the cost of coming back. Plenty of people who retire abroad eventually return to the United States. Health changes. A spouse dies. Grandchildren arrive. The adventure stops being an adventure. This is normal, and it is not failure, but it is expensive, and it is much more expensive than leaving was. Coming home means airfare, shipping or abandoning your belongings, and then re-entering an American housing market you have been out of for years, without a recent rental history, possibly without a current American credit profile, and at an older age. It can also mean the Medicare late enrollment penalty we covered in another video, permanently attached to your premium. So when you build the emergency reserve, build it large enough to fund a return, not just to absorb a bad month. That is the actual function of the reserve. It is what keeps the decision reversible, and a reversible decision is a completely different thing psychologically from an irreversible one. People who know they can come home are far more willing to give a place a genuine chance. One more consideration specific to a Social Security income: your benefit rises with the annual cost of living adjustment, which is calculated from American inflation. Your expenses, however, are denominated in Ecuadorian or Portuguese or Thai prices. There is no reason those two things should move together, and over a decade they can diverge substantially. In a good stretch, your American adjustment outpaces local inflation and you gradually get richer. In a bad stretch, local rents rise while your adjustment is small, and you gradually get squeezed. You cannot control that. You can only leave margin for it. Which is the argument, one more time, for not spending your entire benefit every month just because a country makes it possible. So who wins, on a Social Security budget? At Scenario B, $2,400 a month, you have real choice, and I would rank Panama first for the combination of the lowest residency bar, the dollar economy, strong healthcare, and short flights home. Portugal second if Europe matters to you and you accept the interior. Colombia third for healthcare value if you can tolerate currency exposure. At Scenario A, $1,800 a month, the list shortens considerably. Panama still works, comfortably. Albania works on the money and asks you to accept weak healthcare. Portugal's interior works if you are disciplined. Ecuador clears the visa but leaves less margin. Thailand largely closes unless you have the deposit capital. And if I had to give one piece of advice to someone whose retirement is mostly Social Security, it would be this: prioritize the dollar economies. Panama and Ecuador remove the single largest uncontrollable variable from your budget. When your income is fixed and modest, predictability is worth more than a slightly lower rent, because you cannot absorb being wrong. If this was useful, subscribing helps us keep making it. Now tell me in the comments, is your plan built around Social Security alone, or do you have other income on top? And if it is Social Security alone, which of these 7 is closest to something you would actually do? I am genuinely curious how many people are working with Scenario A rather than Scenario B, because most retirement content is quietly written for people with much more. Educational information only. Not financial, tax, medical, legal or immigration advice. Benefit amounts, exchange rates and immigration rules change. Verify your own situation at ssa.gov and with the official government sources for any country you are considering. But a Social Security budget means nothing if healthcare destroys the plan. Watch our Medicare gap investigation next. It is on your screen now.